Now, my history with Dragon Age is rather short. Inquisition was one of the first games I bought when I first built my PC way back when. I never touched a Dragon Age before then. I enjoyed the game quite a bit. The characters drew me in instantly, and having my first AAA game run at 60 FPS, and I knew I made the right call jumping from consoles to PC. According to you folks of the internet, Dragon Age is revered for its dark themes and the ability to give you full control of your choices, all held together by immaculate writing. And it's a role-playing game where the character you play as is whatever you desire it to be. While here in Veilguard, you can still create your own character and have your background information and choices have some effect on the story. For example, being part of the Shadow Dragons gave me extra dialogue options in Dogtown. It will let me argue against certain characters, letting them know I wouldn't fall prey to their swindles. Just make sure you choose the More option at the bottom of the dialogue wheel to open up these extra dialogues. Also, when customizing your character, there's the option to customize the Inquisitor from the previous game, but you gotta do this during your character creator, and I missed this because it wasn't really up in my face about it, and I just went with the default without knowing. If you choose to go with the default Inquisitor, or like me, just didn't know you could change the option, the default one gets some extra options regarding Solus and his story, so it's not a huge problem if you forget to change your Inquisitor. Sadly, in terms of character expression, you don't get much freedom on what your character gets to say. It's pretty much the exact same decision, just dressed in a different tone. Often your choices are agreeable, slightly jokingly, kind of like a Marvel movie, or a little bit stern, but on the rare occasion, you can be empathetic, angry, or this option that just looks like he's yelling. And this is because while you can create your own character, you're pretty much locked in into playing Rook's story, not truly creating your own story. And Rook? Well, Rook is wholeheartedly a hero in the most basic sense. Rook has a sense of justice, truth, and hard work. You can't really deviate from this script. His dialogue is often very bland, like a first draft that conveys the plot that didn't go through much revision to spice it up and make it interesting. And the plot is incredibly basic. The game begins with you and Varric from Inquisition trying to stop Solus from the previous game, opening a veil that's keeping great evil from ravaging the land. A lot goes wrong and Solus is trapped in the Fade as he guides you occasionally to fix the trouble all this has caused. If you're a big fan of Inquisition, I'm sad to say, you have very little interactions with both Varric and Solus throughout the remainder of the game. The entirety of Act 1 is primarily learning of the world and the Blight as you recruit your party members all across the world of Thedas. Veilguard is a very bright and colorful game, and because it has that very animated children's CGI look, when you're confronted with great despair, it doesn't really hit. Like, I get you get this giant choice early on where you can either save the mayor who led his people to death or let him rot, but the Disney-like aesthetics makes the stakes feel sort of cartoonish, almost like something I see on like a TV show for kids. And honestly, there isn't much strife in the game in general. Your companions have issues, but the tone of their actions feel very flat. With the impending doom and gloom of the Veil falling apart and having demons and literal gods threaten the world as you know it, your party members have a bright smile across their face like it's playtime. Don't misunderstand. While the tone is a little off, the companions and their side quests can be quite enjoyable. Often you go off on little dates where you're exploring the lush world and learning of your companion's background. You have the happy-go-lucky Lace Harding who gained the ability to earthbend, and you both go out and help her master being a rock master. Then there's another happy-go-lucky nerd, Belara, who wants to learn all the secrets of the ancient Elvenon. During your little dates, you learn her brother had perished during a mission, only to later find out he's actually gone rogue, and you have some influence on how she sees her brother from there on. Nav Gallus is part of the devious Shadow Dragons and wants to clean up Dogtown, and you must guide her to either doing so out of righteous duty or a sense of heroic inspiration. The only dreary companion is the brooding Lucanus, who has to clean up the mess in Treviso with its shady underdealings. I'm gonna be honest, I kinda zoned out with him. I didn't find him very interesting, so I don't have much to say. There's the Grey Warden Davrin and his griffin, Asan. You spend your time helping them grow their bond, and you can influence it to be either a friendship or more of a pragmatic partnership between the two. And then there's the elephant in the room, Taj, and their story of being yourself as they're a part of two differing clans, but the main issue is their gender. It's not done with much subtlety. they just make it a big deal that they are non-binary. And for the most part, Tosh is very angry, like incredibly angry. There's just kind of a lot to take in with all their angry outbursts and trying to get everyone to take them seriously. I actually made my character non-binary, and there's a choice at the start of the game where you reflect on how you feel about yourself, and this choice actually changes your dialogue options with Tosh, which I think is pretty neat. Other than that, I didn't really enjoy Tosh as a companion. Her and her mother's squabbles were just kinda ear-grating. And finally, onto my favorite companion, Emmerich. He's more than a discount-looking Doctor Strange, trust me. He's a charming necromancer who wants to become an immortal lich. He constantly gets you to wonder about the value of the soul of the deceased and the importance of life and death. For his companion quest, the final decision will have major implications, and honestly, it got me to stop and think for a while because I just couldn't decide. They are both great options with really big pros and cons to each decision. Onto the combat, Veilguard is extremely fluid with a variety on how you can play, but it's overall kind of underwhelming for me, and that's coming from someone that really likes character action games. In this game, it isn't that, and that's okay. It's just not my cup of tea personally. On the plus side, there are haptics if you play with a DualSense controller. It's subtle, but it does add to the experience of picking up items or the weather, slightly altering the feel of your controller. Like any good RPG, you have different elemental attacks that work well or are weak against other elements. And thanks to the game having transmog, you can increase the stats most important to you while giving your character your favorite style or drip. But this game is primarily a hack and slash, and you'll do just fine paying very little attention to elemental attributes during your fight. You can either hotkey yours and your companion skills or open up a weapon wheel to stop time and be more methodical with your actions. Certain skills can combo in conjunction with other skills to increase their effect. If you open up the weapon wheel and select the skill that will combo with another character's skill, the icon will glow gold and let you know that it will combo together. With the variety of skills you can unlock, a lot of them are passive abilities that boost whatever fits your playstyle, like range attacks, building meter for your skills, or even slight changes in combos, being able to do another move after certain defensive abilities such as guarding or evading. When you see the enemy glow red, it's an unguardable that must be dodged out of. When you see your spidey sense turn yellow, you can guard the attack and stun the enemy. Mind you, it's definitely more of a parry than a guard since you cannot seem to hold the guard button just to block, or maybe it has something to do with me playing a rogue. I don't think so, but it could be. Anyways, make sure you always parry the guardable attacks as it'll leave the opponent vulnerable for a bit for you to dump massive damage onto them. Not only that, but dodging these attacks usually has them recovering the ending frames of their animations pretty quickly, which means you'll only be able to get a scratch or two of damage in before they launch their next attack. So please, learn to parry. I find that if you pull off a successful parry, it gives you the perfect amount of time to go for a charged attack. The rogue's strong charge attack absolutely demolishes armor, while the weak charge attack goes into a launcher with both attack buttons having a different follow-up. I feel like it should be mentioned that it feels pretty iffy to try to cancel the animation of attack into a dodge, so make sure you utilize your scratchy light attacks against opponents that go for guard breaks so you're able to move out of the way in time. This makes fighting enemies with armor quite annoying as armor can only be damaged with heavy attacks, and they do not flinch until you break their armor. Not only are there armored enemies, but barriered ones too. Barriers are weak to projectiles and get broken pretty quickly, so it's mostly just a minor annoyance. What's worse is that sometimes the environment or other monsters block your camera, and you're left in a tizzy on where the heck am I? Where even is my target? What color am I even reacting to right now? And personally, I don't like the Budokai Tenkaichi-esque mechanic where an enemy teleports away and you lose your lock on and spend a few seconds scrambling to find them again and reacting to their attacks at the drop of a hat. And if you use the dodge function a lot, make sure you're locked on, or else you may just miss your enemy and start attacking their shadow. Here's something I didn't learn until near the end of my playthrough. If you time your attacks properly to when your character begins to glow, you actually do extra damage. Besides a few mini/main bosses lasting a bit too long and occasionally doing way too much damage, the game isn't fairly difficult. I turned down the damage and health of the enemies at the 10-hour mark as I felt I had seen everything the combat had to offer. I just wanted to see where the story led me at this point. While I love its fluidity, it's not enough to save it from lacking cool combo options like enemy step cancels from more complex games like Devil May Cry, but it does have delayed combos you can lock deep down the skill tree. If there's something that is sadly forgettable about the combat, are the plain looking ultimate attacks. While it's animated well, it is definitely lacking in the flashy camera department. I know I sound kinda disappointed with the game, but my reaction is that it's just kinda mid, and that's for me specifically. And you know what? Mid isn't bad. I can love mid things. I'm looking at you, binary domain. You dorky son of a gun with your awkward dialogue and playful optimism. It's basically Mass Effect at home, but in Japan. Mid is fine for most, and for some, might be just their cup of tea. For me, greatness takes risks. I can understand longtime Dragon Age fans being severely hurt by the lack of role-playing since you have to play Rook's story instead of crafting your own. The dark tones are mostly gone in favor of a bright and optimistic adventure that can take a little over 30 hours with all your companion quests done. The story is a basic hero's journey where you can't be anything but a goody two-shoes, with story and dialogue that are finished but lack the proper seasoning to leave a lasting impact on your mental taste buds. This is an extremely solid game that feels complete on its own right in an era of broken games at launch, and for some, that'll suffice. To me, this game plays it extremely safe and takes no risks. It settles for good, and for some people, that's more than enough.
File photo doesn't do her justice. She looks familiar. Reminds me of an actress or someone.
Come on, Bo, you know the only movies you watch are porn.